two amazing scents from French Avenue: Atlantis Extrait and Zenith Noir. Hey guys, I'm George, the Nice Gentleman, and it's time for your dose of some fragrance content. It's also time to talk about two amazing new scents from the brand of French Avenue. Both of them turn out to be a huge pleasant surprise for me. They're called Atlantis Extrait and French Avenue's Zenith Noir. First I'm going to talk about this one, Atlantis Extrait. Now this is the latest fragrance in this lineup that I don't know how exactly the whole lineup is called, but they share pretty similar bottle design. They consist of Ether Extrait, of Irida Extrait, we got Chaos Extrait, and now we have Atlantis Extrait. This is the newest member in this line. I'm going to show you very quickly the packaging and the presentation, because if you've seen any videos about the other fragrances that I just mentioned, they look pretty identical. This is the way that the box looks: white colored box with silver and dark blue accents. The concentration here is Extrait de Parfum. The bottle size is 100 milliliters. The production date is August of 2025. And then this is the way that the bottle looks. As you can see, pretty similar to, let's say, Ether Extrait. Now, when I saw information about this fragrance, when I saw some of the first few videos that popped out about this one, everyone was explaining that this smells like a very photorealistic, watermelon. Basically, that's the main note of this fragrance. And I kind of like the way that watermelon smells. I kind of like when that note is used in perfumery. So I had expectations of this very fresh, very summery, very bubblegummy type of scent that this would actually smell. But when I tried it for the first time, when I received it and tried it for the first time, I was really surprised by the way that this smells. Now, it smells of watermelon. It does indeed smells of a very realistic, photorealistic watermelon. But it's not all about that. I expected this one to be very simplistic, to be pretty boring, maybe a little bit more on the simpler side, but it turned out to be more complex than I actually expected. I'm going to use up a few sprays. And the opening kind of feels bubblegummy, feels a bit ozonic and light in the air, feels very sweet, and pretty much feels like having a blast of that watermelon note. But that only lasts for a few seconds. After those few seconds pass, this starts to change a little bit. First of all, you start to get a bit of the freshness that this one has. This has some citruses in the opening. This has a coconut note as well, which after a few seconds, when you spray this one, it starts to become more present and more present. And there's a certain sort of a warmth beneath everything of one of those sweet and fresh notes in the opening of this one. And that warmth comes from a cacao note. And the cacao note, although is not super strong with this fragrance, definitely brings a sort of adds an interesting layer beneath all the sweetness and all the fruitiness and the freshness of this fragrance. And in a way, it adds just a hint of bitterness and adds a bit of the cacao note feels like warm and maybe even slightly spicy in a way. And it really makes the scent a lot more interesting than it would have been without that cacao note in it. The more this dries down, the more sweeter but less bubblegummy and less fresh it becomes. And the dry down is a mix between that watermelon note. The watermelon note is very strong with this fragrance and will stay with you throughout the life of this one. But on the dry down, this cacao note becomes a little bit more present. There's also a bit of ambery sweetness as well. It's not only about the fruits and all that. And overall, this smells very nice, and it smells a lot different than I actually expected it to smell. It smells less fresh than I expected it to smell. It smells less bubblegummy, and just overall, it's a more interesting fragrance than I actually anticipated it will be. And it was a very big, very very pleasant surprise for me, the way that this turned out smelling. Now, this is supposedly a clone of a fragrance that's called Wave Child, and it comes from a brand that's called Room 1015. I've never tried the original fragrance, so I cannot compare it to the original one. And another great thing about this fragrance is the performance. you know, relying on that watermelon note, I expected this one to be more on the average side when it comes to performance, but this so far from my experience has proven to be a pretty strong fragrance that lasts for a good amount of time. I'm talking about at least 8 hours of performance, and also this projects quite nicely, and especially if you spray it on clothes, this will last for a lot longer than this. So overall, another area where this surprised me very, how to say it, very pleasantly was the performance. Now let's move on to the other one, Zenith Noir, which although Atlantis Extrait turned out to be a very pleasant surprise, this one I ended up liking even more. Now I've covered the rest of the fragrances from this line, which are called Zenith Blue, Zenith Tobacco and Zenith Vanilla. Those three fragrances are clones or heavily inspired by original Dior fragrances, and I didn't know at that time that there's a fourth member of this line, and when I got it and I started to gather information about this one, it turned out to be a clone of a completely different fragrance, nothing to do with Dior fragrances. If I'm not mistaken, the original fragrance comes from the brand of Mont Blanc, and it's called Black Meister Stuck, I think is the name of the original one. Again, I've never tried that original fragrance, so it's kind of interesting why French Avenue went with another original fragrance in this lineup when all three other are inspired by Dior fragrances, but that takes nothing away from the scent profile of this one and how much I actually like it. Black colored box that's very similar to the other fragrances in this lineup, silver accents, the concentration here is EDP and the bottle size is 100 milliliters. The way that the bottle looks, again, very similar to the other fragrances, this coming in black color, as the name would suggest, noir. Also the bottle, again, the color of the bottle gives away quite a bit the way that this smells. Good atomizer as you saw. A few sprays. And this is just absolutely fantastic. Again, I've never tried the original fragrance that this is supposedly inspired by, but I've tried a few other things that this is reminding me. For example, this in a way smells similar to Tom Ford's Black Lacquer, although French Fragrance World have a different clone that's a direct clone of Black Lacquer. This in a way brings similar vibes. Another fragrance that this is quite strongly reminding me of, especially in the opening, comes from the brand of Afnan, and it's called Tribute Blue. In a way, I think Armaf also have their own fragrance that smells in a way similar to this one, but this at the same time does things a bit of its own way. I don't know how close it smells to the original fragrance, but this is great. Now this opens up quite dark, quite smoky, inky, with a hint of greenness and a hint of woodiness. And in the opening, this is where this reminds me a lot of Tribute Blue from Afnan. But that fragrance from Afnan is fresher and more woody. This is more darker, this is more spicy and a little bit less green, and has a little bit more sweetness as well compared to the Afnan fragrance. Now the more this dries down, the less smoky it becomes, and on the dry down becomes this interesting mix of there's some vetiver in this one, there's that ambery sweetness, and this feels in a way earthy, but not unpleasantly earthy. You still retain a bit of that inkiness from the opening, a bit of that inky feel in the opening, maybe a hint of the incense, but it's not as strong as it's in the opening. The dry down is a lot sweeter and maybe becomes more wearable for more people out there, because the opening can be a little bit on the challenging side. You also lose some of the freshness that you have in the opening of this one. The dry down is earthy. It feels maybe a little bit grassy in a way, with that ambery sweetness, that inky feel, and just a hint of the smokiness from the opening. But this smells absolutely fantastic. For some reason, the funny story about this one is when I received my box of this, my son actually opened it up. Keep in mind that my son is 3 years old, but he's already very attached to opening new fragrances around me, and he has the chance to do a lot of that stuff. So he opened up he removed the plastic cover, he opened up the box, he took out the fragrance, and without me knowing, he actually sprayed it on his arm. And a few minutes later we sat for breakfast, and I was sitting on the table across him, and I was picking up this scent in the air, and I was wondering what it is, because I was wearing something completely different at that point in time, and I just couldn't figure out what I'm smelling and where it comes from. But then I remembered that he was playing with the box, and he opened up the box, and I sniffed his hand, and it turned out to be Zenith Noir. And immediately in that second in the air, I knew that I'm going to like this one a lot. And this very quickly became one of my most favorite fragrances from the brand of French Avenue. Keep in mind though that this is a little bit on the challenging side, especially in the opening, so my advice will be to try this one before you buy it. But this smells very classy and smells very masculine, smells very dressed up, and just is a signature scent type of fragrance for me personally. You know, this at the current time is one of the my most favorite fragrances that I've tried in 2025 so far. Quality is really good. Performance is also very strong with this fragrance. It lasts for a very long time. It lasts longer than you know, Atlantis Extrait, at least 8-9 hours of performance, good sustained projection for the first 2, maybe even up to 3 hours. So performance wise, this is very good. And overall, this is a fantastic fragrance. It's more orientated towards the colder months of the year, but you can get away with this one in warmer weather, let's say at the night time. And overall, this turned out to be absolutely great. Both fragrances have really nice quality and good performance. And so that's pretty much it, what I had to say in today's video, guys. I hope that you found today's video interesting. If you did, give it a like. And I also hope that you're going to join me in my next video for your dose of some fragrance content. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.